Welcome back. The High Court in Johannesburg has ordered the Gauteng Department of Health to take immediate action to provide radiation oncology services to cancer patients on the treatment backlog at the Charlotte Maxeke Academic Hospital as well as the Biko Academic Hospital. The court ruled that the department's failure to address the backlog was unlawful and unconstitutional. Cancer Alliance, represented by Section 27, took legal action arguing that the department violated patients' constitutional right to health care. For more on this, I'm now joined by Cancer Alliance CEO Salome Meyer. Salome, thanks so much for your time and for joining us this evening. Like, just as I said, the Gauteng High Court has urgently requested the Gauteng Health Department to address the backlog issues, certainly a relief for the Cancer Alliance and most importantly for those patients on that backlog list.
Katlego, indeed, good evening to you and your listeners, and thank you for hosting us on this very important judgment that has been handed down to the Gauteng Health Department. It is a win for human rights. It is a win for health rights in South Africa. In terms of jurisprudence, I mean, it's been a long time since we've had such clarity in a ruling from the court with regards to what actually has to happen and what is the obligation of the state, particularly to fulfill the health rights of the citizens of this country.
So maybe let's just take a step back and discuss what has happened. What seems to be at the heart of the backlog, especially at the Charlotte Maxeke and the Biko academic hospitals?
So in 2022, we alerted the Department of Health, Gauteng, that there is indeed a backlog of nearly 3,000 cancer patients that have been awaiting their radiation oncology treatment at specifically the Charlotte Maxeke Hospital. Obviously, the hospital also had the fire incident that exacerbated the backlog. And it's been because of various reasons, which basically was a result of equipment not being renewed and procured, as well as the fact that the department since 2012 has not actually managed the employment of radiation radiology specialists to treat the patients, and that in essence leads to not enough staff being able to deliver the service, and hence the backlog just literally developed, meaning there's a waiting list, but then from a waiting list you move on to a backlog list. So that is what we have been alerting the department for, trying to work with the department for many years, until in 2024 we then basically realized that the 784 million rand that was allocated to the Department of Health, and that, I need to say also to the viewers, was specifically an amount of money that if we did not intervene, the department would never have received that amount from the Gauteng Treasury. And then they said that the 250 million that was set aside specifically for the treatment of the backlog patients were not spent. Meaning that they didn't fulfill their obligation. The moment that they admitted to that, we then realized that the only way that we could actually get the Gauteng Health Department to admit it in public and in court is to actually go to court. And we then went to court in November and have received the judgment as of yesterday.
Right. So, I mean, in spending or non-spending of that 250 million that was specifically allocated for the oncology services, what's the reasoning by the department in not spending that money and also in not procuring or retaining some of those radiologists? Is it a skills shortage issue that prohibited them in filling those posts?
There is in fact, no clear indication why the department has not even spent that 250 million. What the court have actually indicated that it is shameful that the department didn't act with candor, and that in fact it's been lying to the public and the patients, because for a full year they indicated that they were going to expend the money, only to, when we challenged them with court papers, to in court actually then admit that the 250 million rand went back to Treasury and that they never even applied for a rollover of funding. Now that, in fact, is shameful. I cannot voice it in any other way. And the court, and we need to actually also understand that the Department of Health, Gauteng, actually did everything in their power to badmouth the Cancer Alliance and Section 27 and Treatment Action Campaign in our actions that we've been doing, by saying that we are trying to rule the department from outside. Now the court is actually saying that that is also quite, I mean, why would you do that? Because you actually are not understanding your obligation with regards to Section 195 of the Constitution, that you should be held accountable. And if this is the role that civil society is playing, why are you then saying to them that they shouldn't do that? So I think the court actually is now reminding government what their role is with regards to the Constitution, with regards to Section 27 and people's right to health. And that is why we say that this is indeed a landmark judgment that was handed down. And hopefully we can say then that the Department of Health and then other provincial health departments, as well as the national departments, should actually go and read the judgment and then interpret it, and then say, what is it that we have to do to work in collaborate with civil society, to make sure that we find solutions, collaborate also with the private sector to find the solutions that we so desperately need in this country for equitable health.
I mean, the 250 million that was set aside was for the financial year of 2023 to 2024 for the radiation and oncology services. But then there was also 261 million that was allocated for the 2024-2025 year. Has there been spending on that for those particular services? Do you know?
So what we do know is that the Gauteng Health Department has allocated money and a service level agreement that they have signed with 5 designated service providers in an outsourcing contract. However, that outsourcing contract only came to fruition in January of this year. So one can actually then ask the question, from January until Monday next week, which is the end of the financial year, how much of that 260 million did you expend? If you didn't utilize all your funds, did you actually now apply for rollover of the addition of the funds that you didn't expend? And then comes the next question that we can ask logically. Also, the allocation that is for the next budget year, meaning 2025-26, that starts on the 1st of April, what are you going to do with that money?
Right. So the acting judge, Stephen van Nieuwenhuizen, spoke about how some of the patients that have been on the backlog list have already passed away and that actual irreparable harm has already occurred. Is there any recourse for family members who have been affected by this?
At this stage of the game, we don't even want to go into that part of the judgment. and of the case, because we don't even know what is the extent and the quantum of this problem. All that we know as the Cancer Alliance is that we supplied the Gauteng Health Department with a specific backlog list that is very detailed. And what the court is now ordering the department is to, in fact, update that waiting list, backlog list, so that we can then determine which of the patients can stop.
So the court has also asked and given the hospitals 45 days to clear the backlog. Is this possible? Is this doable in this short space of time?
I think
Am I not correct?
No. Okay. I think we need to be clear on that. The court has given them the 45 days to actually provide the backlog list, the updated list,
right,
so that we can determine which of the patients still require treatment, which patients will never benefit from treatment any longer, and technically which patients are no longer alive. Then next to that, the court comes and says, in 3 months' time, you need to provide us with your plan on what are you going to do with those patients that still require treatment. What are you going to do? Further, the court is also saying, also in 3 months' time, you need to inform the court of what is your long-term plan to basically inform the public and patients with regards to radiation oncology in the future in Gauteng. And I think what is important is the court is also saying to the Cancer Alliance and Section 27 and Treatment Action Campaign, if the Gauteng Health Department does not comply with this order, we have the right to come back with the same case to the court. And that is also very important. So it goes back to accountability. We need to hold government accountable for what they have to do and for what they have received the money to do.
Very quickly, Salome, you mentioned a little earlier about collaboration. Going forward and looking into the long term in terms of the future of these cancer patients and the services and the access to the radiology, what sort of collaborative efforts would you like to see between the Alliance and the Department of Health in the province?
It's not only just the Department of Health in Gauteng, it is in terms of national department. We, the Cancer Alliance, together with the research community, the clinical community, professional societies, is in fact calling on the national department to establish an independent National Cancer Institute. We do not have one single body that represents cancer in this country and that can negotiate the national health insurance in terms of the benefit packages. Who is going to do that? And what we're saying is a national coordinating mechanism such as a National Cancer Institute can actually be that body, and that body can then start looking at the equalization and equity, and when we start talking about the standardization of treatment guidelines, of the number of healthcare professionals that has to be assigned, and also the relationship between public and private. That is what we're calling for, and we are saying that's the collaboration that we need to establish. Cancer is in a crisis in this country, and we're not attending to it. But health is also in a crisis.
All right.
And we do not, at this stage of the game, understand the increase in the cancer burden. And let me just as a final also say that the impact that the funding cuts from America is going to have on cancer is going to be enormous.
All right, Salome, thank you so much for your time. Unfortunately, we need to come to the end of this discussion, something that certainly is a step forward for cancer treatment, not just in the province, but also in the country. Thank you so much for joining us. That's Cancer Alliance CEO Salome Meyer.